Welcome back for another Eidolon Masterclass. Today we're looking at the flame element and... Before I continue, I have to apologize for an oversight on the Dark video. I undersold Festival Muramasa by a lot. This is partially because she used to be my main in the pre-Starstone days, where she was basically an Otohime Light, and because of that, I didn't look closely enough at her upgrades, and that was a mistake on my part. It was pointed out to me by a friend that with a full Starstone upgrade, she actually does surpass Festival Succubus as an on-field Dark Eidolon. I'm very sorry for this oversight, but I do stand by Festival Succubus as the next best option, and superior if you aren't in a position to max out Starstones. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Flame. Classes that can be played Flame include Wizard, Ravager, Shuriken, Brawler, Grenadier, and Sorcerer. Again, I'll remind you I'm not saying that all of these classes are best played as Flame, but you can choose to play them as Flame. And finally, because these Eidolons are a bit more muddled in terms of debuffs and buffs that match with Flame-specific skills, you should consider your personal situation a little more. It's harder to say there's a specifically absolute best one. This time I also won't forget to point out my little icon legend. For each Eidolon, I've got these icons listed to help give you a quick overview at a glance. So, without further ado, let's get into the Flame Eidolons. To start off, Grimm. He's a starter Eidolon that's specifically tailored to be used with a Flame class, and he's actually quite a good option if you picked him, but unfortunately, if you didn't pick him, there is no way to get him. You don't need to reroll his stars, he's got some skills that are quite cohesive in a Flame debuff kit, his upgrades aren't bad, he's a really good choice for a Flame class. It's just that under most circumstances, it's tough to recommend that someone picks Grimm as a starter if they're not 100% sure exactly how they're going to be building their class. Sadly, that does mean that even though Grimm is a pretty darn good option for a DPS Flame class, you cannot get him if you did not pick him without deleting your character and starting again. Aelius. I mentioned Aelius before in my Eidolons that you get for free, which means that basically you do not need to farm Aelius, you will just get him. He's got a cleanse skill and he's got a healing skill, but he's actually not really the best in terms of either of those kind of departments. Just keep in mind that you're getting him free no matter what, so he looks cool in 3-star form. Zaahir. Zaahir is one of the Abyss Eidolons, which means that you can farm him relatively easy in his special dungeon, and he is somewhat orientated towards being DPS. Unfortunately, his upgrade skills are strangely defensive, and anytime you see a buff to elemental damage that doesn't specify it's for party, you should keep in mind that that is an elemental damage buff only for the Eidolon, not for you. Your Eidolon's damage will be somewhat negligible compared to yourself, especially since they don't have stats like Pen. So it's hard to recommend Zaahir as even an early game DPS Eidolon. He is easy to farm though. Bahadur. Bahadur is a special kind of special in that he's got defensive skills and healing, but even in the past, I can't think of a good reason why anyone would actually use him. He's a horse guy, if you like horses. Vermilion. Vermilion is actually the reason why I can't see any reason why you'd want to use Bahadur as a supportive type Eidolon, because Vermilion has a lifesteal skill as well as enemy damage reduction. The only thing I would note is that her lifesteal skill requires a target to use, unlike Kotonoha, which makes it a little bit different in terms of the time that you can trigger it. For example, you can trigger Kotonohas while a boss is still in a cutscene type invulnerable state, while for Vermilion you'd have to wait until you can actually start attacking him. So she is a good support free-to-play Eidolon for the Flame element. I just don't think that you should be upgrading her skills for the fire damage because she's not orientated towards that in general. Uriel. He's got crit rate and crit damage buffs, and his stars are okay, not exactly perfect. He is, however, the only cool dude in the entire list for Flame free-to-play Eidolons. I do think that his skill upgrades are pretty meh. He's got glasses in one of his idle animations though, which makes him pretty cool. So if you're looking for a free-to-play DPS support Eidolon, he's not specifically Flame-oriented, but he is a pretty cool dude. Not exactly highly recommended. Zashi. Zashi is actually short for Zashiki Warashi, which is supposed to be a mythological creature that lives in your house and brings you good fortune as long as you take care of them. Zashi is a pretty good choice for a free-to-play player, provided that you're willing to put in the Mana Star Stones to bring up her skills. She's got a 30% received flame damage debuff that she can offer you, and she's also got a cleanse skill, which is a little bit nice to have in a DPS Eidolon. The only downside is that you absolutely do have to start upgrading her skills in order to make her into a proper DPS Eidolon, and you will still need to reshuffle her stars as well. Unfortunately, there actually aren't a ton of really good free-to-play options for flame players, and if you're going to be putting that many resources into an Eidolon, you might be better off attempting to get your hands on some eggs for some of the paid options that are a lot better with a lot less resources, and not as brand new as the absolute top-end Eidolons. And we'll get into those in a bit. But basically, if you're looking for an Eidolon that you can farm in dungeons, Zashi is your top choice for a flame Eidolon. Justicia. Justicia is the final dungeon farmable Eidolon that we have on this list. In my opinion, her immobilize skill is better than a stun because it allows you to more easily control when you want to actually stun the enemies in dungeons in order to interrupt their skills if you need that, and she does have a damage received debuff that she can use on enemies. However, her skill upgrades aren't great. She does get a little bit more damage received debuff, but the main part of her upgrades are a move speed debuff, which isn't super valuable in PvE, and a fire buff that is only for herself. She is, however, extremely waifu, but she also belongs to Lord N. Unfortunately, that is all the options we have for free-to-play players. Keep in mind that depending on how X-Legend decides to support the following Eidolons, it may be possible for you to buy eggs off of other players, it may be possible for you to roll them yourself on Paragon with your weekly free RC, it's just that there is no way for you to farm these in-game right now. Cerberus. Or Cerberus, I'm not entirely 100% sure the way that it should be pronounced. He's got an immobilize skill, a fire debuff, a dual drive percentage skill, and a cleanse, and on his upgrade, the accuracy buff is for you. The flame damage received debuff is a little on the short side, but he is also the only paid Husbando in the entire flame element, so if you're looking for a cool dude that does add to your DPS, Cerberus is your option. I will also note that on the Taiwan server, the Demeter frag in Party Vault of Eternity Floor 2 has been changed to Cerberus, so in the future it might be possible to farm him. And finally, he has two doggos that follow him around and they're pretty cute too. Aoandon. Aoandon is actually a surprisingly good choice for Flame Eidolon. She's got Flame skill damage buff, she's got a chance to remove all debuffs on you, and she's got a debuff for enemy damage and a buff for your damage, so she's a little bit of a full package in terms of both supportive and DPS. She does, however, make extremely scary sounds in battle, so if you're not a fan of that, you can't use her. Or you'll have to turn off sound effects. As far as older paid Eidolons go, she actually does make a pretty darn good choice to use. And because of being older, other players are more likely to sell her for a lower amount. So if you're looking for a relatively budget-friendly paid Eidolon, Aoandon is a pretty darn good choice, as long as you can live with the scary battle sounds. Halloween Zashi. I think Halloween Zashi is a little bit overlooked in terms of people using her, especially because her unique skill is a 3% drop rate increase. And that is basically nothing. However, she does have a 30% flame damage debuff that lasts for 10 seconds, and on her skill upgrades, she has a damage received debuff for enemies as well. You will need to upgrade her skills, and strictly speaking, there are better options if you have to upgrade skills, but she's not a bad choice. In fact, a lot of people do consider her to be one of the top tier flame Eidolons to use. May I remind you though, she is definitely a child, so she is not a waifu, and you cannot use her as your waifu. Persephone. I've already talked about Persephone before in the first video I did on Eidolons. but all you need to know about her is that she is a top-tier support queen with 10 seconds of complete immunity to all damage and debuffs. She's not going to be your DPS, that's for sure. But if you say anything bad about her, Seimei will appear behind you, and you don't want to know what happens after that. Halloween Zephyrine. I'm going to start off by saying that there is no place for a paid defense Eidolon in the meta. If you need a defensive Eidolon, you are much better off using that only until you need a proper DPS Eidolon, and in that case, I do not recommend working towards a cash-only Eidolon for that. She's got defensive, enemy dealt damage reduction, move speed reduction, and healing support. There is nothing in her kit that is going to add to your DPS, but she sure does look cute. I really like her style. She is very cute, but you can't really use her as an on-field DPS Eidolon. There's just no way to spin that. Thumbelina. Thumbelina is absolutely adorable in her little flower throne thing she got going on there, but unfortunately her kit is really not offensive at all, despite her stars making her look like it should be. She also doesn't have any upgrades to her skills, so there's nothing you can add to her. It's just, well, what you see is what you get. She's got a flame skills debuff and a heal over time, and move speed reduction, which unfortunately is just really not going to help you all that much in PvE. So unfortunately, Thumbelina is not going to be an option for a DPS Eidolon. Abe no Seimei. This guy is very special and very unique because he is perfectly split between fire and ice damage support. Unfortunately, that means for classes that aren't using both of them, he's not a great option. What that does mean, though, is that if you're playing Wiz and you're somewhat split between fire and ice damage, Abe no Seimei is an absolutely perfect Eidolon for you that you won't need to reshuffle anything on. Also, he has a short debuff immunity skill with an equally short cooldown that makes him excellent for use in dungeons like the Nightmares, where you can trigger it to avoid getting the timed debuffs for elemental damage. But again, if you're not a class using both fire and ice, he's not going to do anything much for you. He got soft guy vibes, and I dig it. Queen of Hearts. Queen of Hearts is one of your top options for a paid flame Eidolon. She's got both a debuff to deal more flame damage, as well as a buff to your flame damage. Unfortunately, you are going to need to max out the Mana Star Stones on her Loving Kick skill in order to get the most out of her. Because I'm not so great with the super high-end Eidolons, because I have played as a free-to-play for quite a while now, and I don't consider the Mana Star Stones so much into what's going to be possible, I did reach out to a friend to try to give me some advice on this, and they said, Queen of Hearts would be second place, but you do need to max out the Loving Kick. Also, look at her. She's like premium waifu material. Festival Elizabeth. Festival Elizabeth is going to be your top-tier fire Eidolon at present. Unfortunately, in order to make the most of her, you really need to max out both of her skills with Mana Star Stones, and that is a big ask. It's worth it if you want to go all the way, 100%. Just keep in mind that Queen of Hearts might be a better option if you don't think you can get your hand on that many 1,000 Mana Star Stones. I once did a stream somewhat dressed up as her, so I'm actually a big fan of Festival Elizabeth as well. And she's very pretty, very waifu. Little Red Riding Hood. This little cutie's got a flat defense debuff, a flame skills buff, and a crit damage cap buff. However, her skill upgrades don't actually do much to add to your damage. She can reduce the enemy's crit chance and crit damage, but that's obviously not helping you do anymore. And the damage buffs on that skill are for herself, not for you. And her other upgrade will mostly reduce the target's move speed, which isn't going to be improving your damage at all either. Unfortunately, this cutie isn't going to be a top-tier DPS for you. As a side note, she's got 2 armor-piercing archives, with Cecilla and Serena, which can both be farmed in-game. So if you need some armor piercing in order to get through the hell-level dungeons, you might want to keep in mind that she's a pretty good option for that. Little Drunkard. This is the first Eidolon we've had released by X-Legend since the server transfer, and she was available on Paragon in both fragments and eggs. So it might be possible that even as a free-to-play player, you might have gotten your hands on her with your free RC, or by buying eggs off of other players. Unfortunately, I do have to report that she can't really be used as a DPS Eidolon. She does have a detail damage buff, but for the most part, her kit is support and cleanse. She doesn't add any specific damage for flame. Also, I've been lying to you. She is actually a trap. So, to summarize, for team paid Eidolons, Vestibeth is the premium package at a premium price. You will need to upgrade both of her skills to get the most out of her. Your second choice would be Queen of Hearts, followed by Halloween Zashi, who only need one skill upgrade each. Aoandon is a much older but still very good paid Eidolon that you might be able to get much cheaper and need less investment, and Cerberus is a top Husbando pick. Abe no Seimei gets a special mention, but basically only for Wizard, as his kit is very evenly split between ice and flames. For team free-to-play, Zashi is a good choice if you're going to upgrade her skills for the flame effects. Uriel is a pretty okay Husbando option, but doesn't have anything specifically for flame, and Vermilion is a good early-game support-focused lifesteal Eidolon. And if you picked Grimm, congratulations, you've got a really good flame starter. Something I didn't do last time, but that I thought might be worth a peek, was looking to feature Eidolons on the database website. I'm happy to report that Anubis appears to be a good contender for a future top-tier flame Eidolon, which is great, because personally I think she's one of the most excellent designs X-Legend has come out with, and she will only need one skill upgraded. Stars will need to be shuffled for her too, though. And a special thank you to my friends who helped me with some of the details in this one. I realized that personally, because I, as a free-to-play player, don't have many options for getting my hands on Mana Star Stones, I was discounting a little bit the impact of the buffs that you can get from them. So, big shout out to my friends that put me back on the right track here. That's Extol and Plinko. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. Anyway, thank you for making it through the whole thing, or skipping to the end for the summary. By special request in the comments of the last video, the next video will be on the lightning element. Let me know in the comments here what you want me to do after lightning.